made it to Chirohustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession on the world's #1 chiropractic podcast. Before we dive into this powerful episode, please remember to subscribe to our channel and give us a 5-star rating on iTunes and continue hustling. This episode is sponsored by Imaging Services, Chiro Health USA, Chiro Moguls, Chiropractic Rocks, Pure Chiro Notes, Titronics, doTERRA, Sherman College of Chiropractic, New Patients in a Box, the Influencer Authority Podcast Training, and Prime Spine Consulting. Let's hustle.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 333 of the Chirohustle podcast. I'm your co-host, Luke Millette, and here's your host, Jim Chester.
So today we had the opportunity of interviewing Dr. Danielle Eaton, and this is how to align women in chiropractic. Stay tuned. Welcome back. This is another episode of the Chirohustle podcast, episode 333. We have Danielle Eaton coming in today. And before we get started with this episode, I just set some ground rules for people to know why we do what we do. And the big idea behind what we do is we protect free speech in chiropractic, which I think is very essential. And we do support subluxation-based chiropractors, and we believe that there is a universal intelligence and innate intelligence inside the body. And I think that if anybody is curious about that, they can Google it. And the last thing we do is we protect a sacred trust. And if you don't know what that is, you might want to do a little bit of back work and find out what that's all about. But without any further, Dr. Danielle, welcome to episode 333.
Hello. Well, thank you for having me. And I'm super excited to be episode number 333.
Yeah, it's a really cool number. And it's been a long time coming. And I'm really excited to have you on as a guest today and to tell your chiropractic story, because as we feature this, some people have the idea of who they are and the people close to them know who they are. But as you evolve, you become somebody new. And I believe that the story is the most valuable part of anybody's life. And I would like for you to share your chiropractic story. And keep in mind that the people listening to this will be your friends, family, colleagues, patients, practice members, and the future of chiropractic is going to listen to this. So let's inspire the heck out of them today and tell them their story.
Well, my story is actually quite amazing. And for a long time, I thought that it wasn't, but you'll understand why as I share it with you. So I went to Logan. I started there in 2004. And leading up to the choice to go to chiropractic school, I had studied business administration and social work in my undergraduate degrees. And I was looking for a way to kind of like combine my work and educational experience into something that would be like the next step. So I had looked at all these different things like art therapy and dance therapy and counseling. I considered pharmacy school. And something just kept nudging me to go to chiropractic school. I would like run into friends from high school or even undergrad who had said that they were attending school at Logan. And I've lived in Missouri my whole life. So I looked at Logan on their website. I read a little bit about chiropractic. I thought, that makes sense. Sounds cool. And I just chose it as a career. When I graduated from Logan and I accepted a residency position, I spoke to a lot of groups of students touring the campus, and the admissions people would always have me tell my story. And I thought, this is so boring because I literally just chose chiropractic. I didn't have the experience with chiropractic as a patient that so many people do, that is a life-changing experience, and it takes them to chiropractic school. However, the twist in the story is literally just, it's what, Tuesday? So it was 4 days ago. I was just here in my home doing the mundane, usual things that I do. And I kid you not, all of a sudden, it just, like something just clicked in for me. And I had this very deep knowing I was born to be a chiropractor. And I couldn't really see it or feel it until now, almost 20 years after making the choice to go to chiropractic school. It's so hard to put it into words and to really like express the way that it felt for me. It was just like a knowledge bomb had like hit me. And I was like, whoa, how had I never seen it before? I was literally born to be in this profession. I was born to be a chiropractor. There is nothing else I could or would rather do than chiropractic. So you're the first ones that get to hear that story, because I really haven't shared it with anyone else.
I think it's always it's powerful to be able to explain to people how you got to where you are today. And I think one of the things that I would like to touch on with you today is the program you started, Aligned Women. And I know that that's probably something really special to you that you've developed over some time, and you've helped a lot of people with it. So let's explain that to the people listening today, and what you've been up to.
So the background is that when I finished my residency at Logan, I became the assistant director of sports and rehab. And during that time, I had my first baby. And shortly after she was born, I found myself at work thinking, like, I don't really think this is for me anymore. Before becoming a mom, I loved my job. I was working all the time, nights, weekends, traveling all over. And it was great. I loved it. I loved the adventure and the hustle. But then I had this baby, and I was like, actually, I think it's time for me to move on and really honor the whole reason I went to chiropractic school in the first place, which was to own my own business, be able to help people the way that I wanted to. And so I left my salary corner office with the windows I had worked so hard to get, and paid vacations, and then started my own practice. It didn't take long before I realized that the freedom I thought that I was leaving my job for and going after as a business owner was not what I was actually experiencing, which was my own fault, my own doing, right? All I knew was, like, I was going to work hard and I was going to grow a busy practice. I did that. However, I was never seeing my child awake. I was gaining weight, feeling super unhealthy. I was like, this is not what I thought it was going to be like. I don't want to just always be thinking, like, well, one day I'll take care of myself. One day I'll have more time with my kids. One day I'll be able to take a trip with my husband. And I started to do some things differently after taking some time off. I read a lot of books. I listened to a lot of podcasts. I had very little financial resources. I had to figure out, how could I do things differently? And bit by bit, I started implementing the things that I was learning from outside of chiropractic into practice. And I found, actually, a lot of the things that I had been doing before in practice were things I had been doing just because I thought that they were what I needed to do, or someone else had told me to do, but they weren't really the right things for me or for my family. So I started a second practice, and it was completely different than my first one. I had like 10 office hours a week available instead of like 50. I didn't take insurance. I only accepted self-pay patients. I was kind of particular about the patients that I accepted into my practice. And with only 10 office hours a week, I was only working in my practice maybe like 20 hours total with all the other things I needed to do. Yet that practice was profitable in the first 90 days. And that was something that after a year into practice, I was still working hard to get to. And this time it felt easy. So that's when I knew I was onto something, and I had to share it with more people, right? Like, well, this is actually so easy, and I have all the time that I need and want with my children, and I'm making more money. More people need to know this. I'm surely not the only person who has ever felt like they had to sacrifice themselves and they had to sacrifice their family to be able to be successful in practice. And so now, 5 years later, 6 years later, I've helped hundreds of women be able to have that same freedom, which is something that I'm really proud of.
And so, what are some things that you do for your own health and your family's health?
Everything, especially since we have been in this pandemic phase or era, right? We've really ramped up our health practices, if you will. I have a pretty robust self-care routine. I have a genetic condition that affects my cartilage, my tendons, my ligaments. It makes me extra bendy. It's really fun as a chiropractor. And so from a musculoskeletal perspective, I need to do a lot to take care of my body. I get a massage every month. I get adjusted every 3 weeks usually. I go to a light therapy center and also like a halo therapy, which is salt. It's a salt therapy where you inhale this salt in a salt room. At home, we're taking all the vitamins, all the supplements. Um, the one thing that I would say we could be better at is going outside. And I live in Missouri. In the winter in Missouri, it's, it's not super inviting to go outside, but I feel like I was just thinking about this morning. We could really spend some more time outside, and that would be really good for us.
Well, I think that, being transparent and honest with people is really what this show cultivates. It inspires people. It lets people know that one of my mentors, Ed Osborne, would always tell me that we're more alike than we are different.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a truth within chiropractic also. And I think it's true the way that people, there's no one out there that wants to have a poor version of themselves. Most people want prosperity, and that comes from health. And that comes from healthy habits and routines. And I think that's important for people to know that they should do certain things on a routine basis to stay healthy. And I think that's really cool to share with people what we do. I mean, Luke has his routines. I have my routines, and the most people that find any bit of balance in the world find out that having healthy habits and healthy routines really matter. And chiropractic is a component of that. And a lot of people still, we have to really go to the rooftops and to the podcasts, and we have to explain to people how it helps people, what it is, that it's not just neck cracks and low back pain and car crashes and things of that nature. It's actually a vitalistic approach to staying healthy, and components of that are getting outside and taking supplementations and staying hydrated, and things that most people, they think, in the back of their head that these things are important, but when they spend a day where they only drank 1 cup of water, they don't realize the downstream effect of that. Or if they are on supplements and they run out and they never go and repurchase that stuff, and they don't keep it like a supply in their body, they just don't think that it's important. So I think some of these things that you're being transparent with to people is, yeah, get outside more, and take care of your body, and get a massage every once in a while. It's not a luxury. It's something that's essential to feeling good and to functioning well. So I appreciate you sharing that. Let's talk a little bit more about practice growth. How did you attract enough people to become profitable with this system? And what were some of the ways that you went out to your community or connected with your community in order to grow the practice?
I wish I could tell you it was like a really fancy and high tech method, but really what I did was I first got really clear on who are the people I want to attract to my practice, because previously I had just like accepted everybody. I want anyone to be a patient here. And what I have found over the years as I've taught this to other people is that we as chiropractors, we have a huge mission, right? We want to help as many people as possible. And I think for some people, they have the physical and maybe also mental and emotional constitution to be able to have a really high volume practice and help hundreds of people, if not thousands of people every week. I'm not one of those people. So I confuse that with thinking like the way for me to be successful in practice is to see as many people as possible. And when I let that notion go and really focus in on, if I want to do this for the long term, what do I need to do differently? Okay, I need to be more clear about who I really want to work with in my practice. Who are the right people for me to have here? So that was number one. And then figuring out where are those people and how do I pull them in? Well, the answer for me at that time was social media. And I think that's only more true now than it was then. So I found local Facebook groups for this area. I joined them. I started getting to know people in them, like the people who are of influence in the community. And suddenly I had all these patients in my practice who were amazing people, like the people that I would want to have in my practice every day, all day.
So, where do you think chiropractic is going to find itself in the next 20 years or so, since we're talking about long term?
I think that this question has perhaps two answers. One is like, what do I hope will happen? And the other is a possibility that I hope doesn't happen, right? Because we have seen technology advance in tremendous ways over the last roughly 2 decades. But the advancements in technology are going to explode exponentially over the next 2 decades. And there are going to be things that are implemented into healthcare. There already are things implemented into healthcare that most chiropractors are not aware of. And when we hear about them, we're like, what? So artificial intelligence types of things, right? I read an article in a chiropractic magazine or paper recently that talked about, will robots be performing chiropractic adjustments in the future? And I was like, no. No, I read it, and the whole time I was like, no. But it's a possibility because robots are able to do a lot of other things. That's the timeline I hope that we're not on, right? Is that chiropractors who work with their hands on real humans are replaced by robots. I know it sounds so strange, but it's an actual possibility. The timeline that I hope that we're on is that more and more people understand that human connection is essential to our well-being, and that means seeking out providers like chiropractors, people who are really high touch, literally high touch. There's nothing, no robots could ever replace that human connection, right? The thing that I think we will have to do to adapt is we're going to have to, one, either open up to sharing more on social media, being more present, being more active and engaged on social media as a whole, collectively, or we're going to have to get really good with bringing new patients to our practice outside of the matrix, if you will, outside of the online things, which is actually relatively simple if you put effort into it. So that's the good news. I think if we're on this timeline where people in general become more aware of the need that we have as humans to have human connection and to be connected like that with our care providers, we're on the right track and we can't lose.
You've made it to Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession on the world's #1 chiropractic podcast. This episode is sponsored by Imaging Services, Chiro Health USA, Chiro Moguls, Chiropractic Rocks, Pure Chiro Notes, Titronics, doTERRA, Sherman College of Chiropractic, New Patients in a Box, the Influencer Authority Podcast Training, and Prime Spine Consulting. Let's hustle.
There's a lot of interesting things to think about.
Right.
So, who would you say are some of your heroes or people who've inspired you to become the version of yourself that you are today? And they don't have to be chiropractic based, it could be anybody.
This is an interesting question for me because I generally don't pedestalize other humans, right? I don't look at anyone else as above me as often as possible. So when it comes to like celebrities, for example, I'm just kind of like, whatever. I'm not impressed generally by celebrities. But if I think about who has had the most influence on me in a positive way, I would say it's actually Jesse Elder. He's not a celebrity outside of Facebook, maybe, but he has influenced a lot of chiropractors. You had mentioned Dr. Ed Osborne. Dr. Ed had mentored with Jesse years back. I've just always found that he has something for me to learn from, and like he's a few steps ahead of the future than I am, right? So he's like, here's what's happening next. Here's the shift that's happening next. And then when I see it presented by him, I'm like, oh, you're right. That is where we're going. Okay. And then I know I can shift with confidence and following his lead.
So, chiropractically speaking, if you were able to sit down and talk to somebody from the annals of chiropractic and have some time with them, who would you pick?
The first person that comes to my mind is Dr. Patrick Montgomery. He is an instructor at Logan College, and I could probably message him on Facebook and ask questions if I needed to or wanted to, because he's just that kind of person that he would answer questions for anyone, not because of who I am, but because that's who he is, right? But as a student at chiropractic school, and even now today, I just have always had so much reverence for who he is, and he has such a deep love for chiropractic and familial roots, generations of chiropractors in his family, which is not something that I have had ever, clearly. And so I feel like it's almost like it's this intangible thing for me when I see other chiropractors that have generations of chiropractors in their family. I'm like, wow, what was that like? What was it like to grow up in the chiropractic lifestyle? I didn't experience that. It seems like it would be pretty cool to me. I'm sure there are downfalls, but I'll have to ask my kids in a few years what it was like for them.
I'm pretty sure we had Patrick on the show.
Yeah, we have. Yep.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you could change anything about the chiropractic profession, what would you change and why?
I think the thing that would be the most important for all of us, not just chiropractors, but for everyone, is for us to stop feeling like the underdogs and to stop feeling bad about what we do in some way, right? Like, we know that what we do works and it helps people. And yet so many of us are hesitant to really express it and to really share it unabashedly with the world. And where we are now, politically, pandemically, there's never been a better time. I know chiropractors say that all the time. There's never been a better time to be a chiropractor. There's never been more people on the planet, in our lifetimes at least, who are open to and looking for other ways to be healthy than what we've been told through the narrative through our whole lives, that like we just do these things, take these medications, and we don't think about it or question it. We just do it, right? We offer that alternative that people are looking for. But if we are too afraid to share it with them, they won't know that. So we have a responsibility to get past those fears, to move through those fears, and to really let people know what we can do for them and how we can help them.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that's really important to position as a leader, and to not think about the dogmatic approach of market share or who's seeing how many or things like that. It's about finding the rightful place as a practitioner and taking care of your avatar client, which you've figured out is really healthy for you as a practitioner.
Yes.
Talking into this, helping other women through Aligned Women, the program that you've developed. Tell us a miracle story that you've seen happen because of the program that you've developed with them. And then at the backside of that, the two-parter is tell us a miracle story that you've experienced in practice. So it's a two-part question.
Awesome. Okay, so I'll start with in practice. And this is probably outside of the box because most of us would say something that we saw happen after someone was adjusted for the first time, per se, right? But the first story that comes to my heart when I consider this question, like, what is my miracle story? There was a student who came to the student clinic that I worked in at Logan. So this was probably roughly 2010-ish. He was around 12 or 13 years old. He had been hit hard in a tackle in football practice. His neck had been hurting ever since. He went back to practice a day or two later. Same thing happened, and his helmet popped off. It was all this, like, it was very strange. So the kid comes into the clinic and is assessed by an intern. And I still remember which intern this was. And the intern comes to me and says, I think you should take a look. I'm wondering if we should get x-rays. And I was like, okay. So I go just quickly have him perform range of motion of the cervical spine. And I asked him to look up, look down, and he didn't move his head, just his eyes. He looked up and he looked down, and I was like, okay, not with your eyes, but with your head. And he was like, oh, I can't even look up or look down. And I was like, I think we better get some x-rays. Let's just be on the safe side. Well, lo and behold, this child had a fracture in his cervical spine, which we initially thought was from the hit in football practice, right? Seems a little odd. Further investigation and imaging showed that he actually had a bone tumor in his cervical spine, which was where the fracture occurred. So the bone was weakened by the tumor and was able to fracture easily. And even just every time I share this story, I say it out loud. My whole body is like, oh my gosh. Like it just reminds me of how thankful we can be for our clinical education, because as much as people complain about, how much time we have to spend in school or all the other things that we learn that are not chiropractic, I am so thankful that I had the clinical knowledge and honestly also the intuition to say, I think we should get some imaging on this child before any treatment is performed. And he had to go through chemotherapy for cancer after this bone tumor was found. So his whole life was impacted by that one event. And he was just not even a teenager yet. I wish I knew where he was now to know how is he doing. Unfortunately, I don't. But yeah, that experience is definitely one of those things where I was like, whoa, I'm so thankful. And he and his parents were also so thankful that all the things played out the way that they did, because the alternative options were definitely not better.
And can you imagine there's wackadoos out there that want to take imaging out of chiropractic? Like, that's a point of contention for me, and why we do what we do is because it's like taking a carpenter and saying, oh, we don't use saws anymore. You guys are going to have to karate chop all this stuff. Like, it's almost that is, now you're telling the truth. That's the real truth of chiropractic, is that you can take an image of somebody and find out what the pathology is and find out what the best assessment is to deliver care to somebody. And that's a problem for me.
It's really interesting. I think there's a very fine line between having regulations in place to protect the public, but also having too much oversight and regulation by the government, right? I mean, I think I could probably say this transparently in this space, that one of the things I've learned over the last 2 years is just how much control and manipulation we have in our lives from the government. And it's not to our benefit. It's not because they care so much about us, right? So on one hand, yeah, I hope that having certain types of regulation within our profession is for the benefit of the public, but that doesn't seem to be what's actually playing out. I think the ideal scenario is that I, as a practitioner, can decide what is best for the patient who is sitting right here in front of me. I decide what do I think is best for them, right? And if they trust me and I trust them, then why does anyone else need to interfere or intervene in that exchange? Mm-hmm. But we're all so deep into the systems that we comply with them.
Well, you are the doctor.
The last time I checked.
So what are some websites or web links where people can find out more about you or Aligned Women or anything else that you might be working on right now?
The best places to connect with me are on Facebook and Instagram. Either place is, like, if you go find my profile, you're going to be actually interacting with me, not someone else. And I also have a Facebook group. It's open to all kinds of health and wellness practitioners. So there's a lot of chiropractors, but we also have massage therapists, acupuncturists, nutritionists, mental health therapists, a wide variety of people, which is actually pretty fun and it's pretty cool.
Well, what's the name of the group and what is your Instagram handle?
the name of the Facebook group is Health and Wellness Practitioners. It has a subtitle, which is Growth Through Community. So the full title looks like Health and Wellness Practitioners, Growth Through Community. And on Instagram, I'm at Dr. Danielle Eaton.
And we didn't get the second part of the question. Tell us a miracle story of somebody that's actually gone through your Aligned Women's program and maybe something special that's happened.
It's really hard for me to isolate one specific example because there have been so many. But I think the theme that stands out to me, which is the thing that I'm the most proud of for Aligned Women, is just how many women have stayed in practice longer than the statistics show that they should have. And we're actually currently working on some research to develop some data from our founding members and then onward to literally demonstrate. And this is the beauty of science, right? Like, I have to stay unattached from the outcomes, and it's a little hard for me to do because I have a personal bias. But I'm like, whatever this data shows us is what it shows us, and then we know where we're at and where we need to go next. But so far, from 10 responses, we've had all 10 people still in practice 5 years later. And the statistics often show us that women chiropractors stop practicing after 5 years. So we've beat the odds by 100% from those 10 respondents so far. I'm really excited to find out what happens next.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, we're just about at the end of our time together today, but before we close out, is there anything you wanted to talk about that we just didn't ask you about?
The only thing that I would say is thank you for doing the work that you do. I mean, you can tell how passionate I am about chiropractic, and the passion that I have for chiropractic has only grown. I mean, it grew exponentially just 4 days ago, right? It's grown exponentially through the pandemic. I felt like I got a great clinical education at the school that I attended. I did not get a ton of chiropractic philosophy. It was available. I just kind of actually didn't want to participate in it. I thought it was a little too out there and a little too weird. I had to learn what chiropractic really meant to me on my own. And it's much different for me now than it was 20 years ago or 15 years ago or 10 years ago. I'm sure it'll be different for me 10 years in the future too. But as much as I wish that it wasn't true, chiropractic is still an outlier, right? Like, there's still some stigma attached to chiropractic. So to sign yourselves up for this journey of supporting chiropractors and really doing it unabashedly and wholeheartedly and embracing the chiropractic philosophy the way that you do is something to be commended. So thank you.
It's our pleasure to do what we do, and having guests on with the caliber of knowledge that you have and being able to align doctors together. It's been really special for us, and to have you on as episode 333 has been quite the honor. And we thank you so much for sharing so openly and protecting the sacred trust and telling your story and practicing free speech. I think it's something that we really have to find the value in over time, because if we don't take action with it, who knows what their next move is to stymie this profession, or to stymie free speech, or to stymie the practice of chiropractic. And as we, digressed into earlier, removing the ability to take x-rays in some areas is it's unacceptable to me. So we have to continuously support one another and to produce really high-end quality content with high-end guests. So we continuously push forward the messaging of chiropractic for people that might not know what it is, or they might, like I always open up with, we have an idea what it is to us, but they don't know what it is. Like you said, the stigma, they don't have an idea what it is to them.
Yeah.
So we need to foster that development with the knowledge base and the stories around that, to where people start to understand that it can't be denied. And this is documenting it, and it's a time capsule of everyone's stories. And these stories are so powerful. And when we go 20 years forward and look back, we're going to realize the power of what these interviews mean, and the careers that we touched and the lives we touched with doing the show. So We commend you too for being a member of the tapestry that we're creating with the chiropractic story. And we thank you for being our guest today.
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Danielle, thank you again. And we just want you to enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
You too.
All right. Bye for now.
We'll see you.
Thanks for listening to Chiro Hustle. Don't forget to subscribe and check back next week to continue hustling.